A lonely rancher was literally digging his own grave when 3 freezing orphans appeared at his gate with a letter that would change everything. What he discovered in that letter from his past would either destroy him completely or give him a second chance at family he never thought possible. If you want to discover how one winter night turned a man's darkest moment into his greatest blessing, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss these incredible true stories of hope and redemption. The Montana wind howled through the bare cottonwood trees as Jack McCready drove his shovel into the frozen earth for what felt like the 1,000th time that evening. Each strike sent sharp vibrations up his weathered arms, but he welcomed the pain. It was the only thing that felt real anymore. 40-5 years old, and this was what his life had come to. Digging his own grave beside the 2 wooden crosses that marked where his wife Sarah and son Benjamin lay buried. The headstones were simple, carved by his own hands during those dark weeks 3 years ago when the fever took them both. "Should have been me," he muttered, the words forming white clouds in the bitter December air. "Should have been me, Sarah." Jack had been a different man once, the kind who sang while he worked, who looked forward to each sunrise, who believed God had a plan. That man died the day he lowered his family into the ground. What remained was a hollow shell going through the motions of living. The McCready Ranch stretched across 500 acres of some of the most beautiful land in Montana territory, but Jack barely saw it anymore. The cattle were sold off months ago. The farmhands had been let go. Only a handful of horses remained in the stable, along with 1 milk cow he kept out of habit more than necessity. As Jack paused to wipe sweat from his brow despite the freezing temperature, he heard something that made him freeze. Voices, small voices, carried on the wind. He squinted through the darkness toward the main gate, nearly a quarter mile away. 3 small figures huddled together, one of them reaching up to ring the old dinner bell that hung beside the entrance. "Get," Jack called out, though he knew they couldn't hear him from this distance. "Ain't got nothing for beggars." But the figures didn't move. If anything, they seemed to huddle closer together. Jack cursed under his breath and stabbed his shovel into the dirt pile beside the half-dug grave. He'd been planning to finish tonight, to finally put an end to this miserable existence. The last thing he needed was some drifters causing trouble. He stalked toward the gate, his boots crunching through the snow that had begun falling an hour earlier. As he got closer, he could make out what they were: children. 3 of them, none looking older than 12 or 13. "What do you want?" Jack demanded, stopping 10 feet short of the gate. "It's past sundown, and this is private property." The oldest child, a girl with tangled auburn hair, peeking out from beneath a threadbare woolen cap, stepped forward. She was thin, too thin, and her clothes were worn but clean. Behind her, a boy of maybe 8 years held the hand of a tiny girl who couldn't have been more than 5. "Please, mister," the older girl said, her voice steady despite the way her whole body shivered. "We've been walking for 2 days. We have a letter for you, from Mrs. Catherine Dunn." Jack's blood went cold at the name. Catherine Dunn. He hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in 15 years, but it still hit him like a punch to the gut. "Catherine's dead," he said flatly. "Has been for years." "Yes, sir," the girl replied. "She died 3 weeks ago. Consumption. But before she passed, she gave us this." She held up an envelope, yellowed with age. "Said if anything ever happened to her, we should bring it to Jack McCready at the McCready Ranch in Montana Territory." Jack stared at the envelope as if it were a rattlesnake. Catherine Dunn had been his first love, back when he was a young man full of dreams and foolish notions. They'd planned to marry, to build a life together, but her father had other ideas. He'd forbidden the match and sent Catherine east to live with relatives. Jack had tried to follow, But by the time he'd saved enough money for passage, she'd already married someone else. "I don't want your letter," Jack said, turning away. "Whatever Catherine had to say, it's too late now. Please." The girl's voice cracked with desperation. "We ain't got nowhere else to go. The orphanage in Denver turned us away," said they. "We're full up. Mrs. Dunn, she took care of us when nobody else would. She said, she said, you were a good man. That you'd help us if we needed it." Jack turned back, his eyes hard. "Mrs. Dunn was wrong about a lot of things. I ain't a good man, and I ain't looking to help nobody. There's a town 5 miles south of here. Try there." "We did." The boy spoke up for the first time, his voice small and frightened. "They told us to move along. Said they don't want orphans bringing disease and trouble. The smallest child, the—" Little girl suddenly swayed on her feet. The boy caught her arm, steadying her. "Lucy ain't eaten since yesterday," the older girl said quietly. "None of us have. We spent our last coins on train fare to get here." Jack watched as the little girl, Lucy, leaned heavily against the boy. Even in the dim light, he could see her lips were blue with cold. All 3 children were trembling violently now as the snow began to fall harder. Something twisted in Jack's chest, an emotion he'd tried to bury along with his family. He looked at the letter in the girl's hand, then at the 3 small faces staring up at him with a mixture of hope and terror. "What are your names?" he heard himself ask. "I'm Emma," the older girl said. "This is my brother Thomas, and this is Lucy. She ain't blood related, but we look after her like family." Jack studied them for a long moment. Emma had protective defiance in her green eyes, ready to fight the world for her makeshift family. Thomas had the scared but brave look of a boy trying to be older than his years. And Lucy looked like Sarah had when she was that age, all wide blue eyes and golden curls. "One night," Jack said finally, his voice rough. "You can sleep in the barn tonight, get warm, get some food in you. But come morning, you move on. You understand?" Emma's face flooded with relief. "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." Jack opened the gate and gestured for them to follow him. As they walked toward the house, Emma fell into step beside him. "The letter," she said hesitantly. Would you read it?" Mrs. Dunn said it was real important." Jack glanced down at the envelope still clutched in her small hand. Part of him wanted to burn it without reading it, to let the past stay buried. But another part, a part he'd thought was dead, was curious about what Catherine had felt important enough to preserve for 15 years. "Later," he said gruffly. "First, let's get you children fed and warm." As they approached the house, Jack couldn't help but notice how the windows glowed yellow in the darkness, how the smoke rising from the chimney looked almost welcoming. It had been so long since anyone else had been here that he'd forgotten how different the place felt with other voices, other footsteps. He led them to the kitchen, where the cast-iron stove still held warmth from his earlier cooking. Emma immediately guided Lucy to a chair near the heat, while Thomas stood uncertainly by the door. "Sit," Jack ordered, more gruff than necessary. "I'll heat up some stew." As he ladled leftover beef stew into bowls, Jack found himself stealing glances at the children. When had he last cooked for anyone but himself? When had he last heard a child's voice in this house? He set the bowls before them and watched as they ate with the careful restraint of children who'd learned not to waste food. Lucy could barely hold her spoon steady, her small hands still shaking from cold and exhaustion. "There's more," Jack said when Emma hesitated over the last spoonful in her bowl. "Eat." For the first time since they'd arrived, Emma smiled. It was just a small upturn of her lips, but it transformed her whole face. "Thank you, Mr. Macready. This is the best stew I ever had." Jack grunted and turned away, but not before he felt that unwelcome twist in his chest again. When the children had finished eating, he led them to the barn, where he set up makeshift beds in the hay loft with blankets that still smelled like Sarah's lavender soap. "Doors always unlocked if you need anything," he said, though he hoped they wouldn't. "I'll wake you at dawn." As he headed back to the house, Emma called after him softly, "Mr. Macready?" "The letter?" Jack paused in the doorway, looking back at her holding the envelope. In the lamplight, she looked even younger, even more vulnerable. "Tomorrow," he said. "I'll read it tomorrow." But as Jack lay in his empty bed that night, listening to the wind howl around the house that had felt like a tomb for 3 years, he knew he was lying. He'd been ready to dig his own grave tonight, ready to end the pain that had consumed him. Since losing his family now, with 3 orphan children sleeping in his barn and a letter from his long-lost past waiting to be read, Jack Macready found himself staring at the ceiling, more awake than he'd been in years. Outside, the snow continued to fall, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled at the moon. But inside the barn, 3 children slept warm and safe, and for the first time in 3 years, the Macready Ranch didn't feel quite so empty. Jack woke before dawn, as he had every day for the past 3 years. But this morning was different. This morning, he remembered why before his eyes even opened. The children. He dressed quickly and stepped outside into the crisp morning air. 6 inches of fresh snow had fallen during the night, blanketing the ranch in pristine white. The world looked clean, almost peaceful. Jack made his way to the barn, expecting to find the children still asleep. Instead, he found Emma already awake, sitting in the hay with Lucy curled against her side. The little girl was burning with fever. "She got sick in the night," Emma whispered, her voice tight with worry. "Started shivering something awful, then got real hot. I don't know what to do." Jack approached slowly, his eyes taking in Lucy's flushed cheeks and the way she breathed through her mouth. He'd seen this before, too many times. Fever was a killer out here, especially for children. "Thomas still sleeping?" Jack asked. Emma nodded toward a pile of blankets where the boy was curled up like a puppy. Jack knelt beside Lucy and placed the back of his hand against her forehead. She was burning up. "How long has she been like this?" "Couple hours, maybe. She was fine when we went to sleep, just tired and cold. But then she started talking in her sleep, saying things that didn't make sense." Jack's jaw tightened. The fever was already affecting her mind. He'd lost his own son to fever that started just like this, seemingly overnight, progressing fast. "Can you carry her?" he asked Emma. "Yes, sir." "Where?" "The house. She needs to be warm and dry, and I need to get some medicine in her." Emma gathered Lucy in her arms, and Jack was struck by how natural it looked, how protective the older girl was of the child, who wasn't even her blood sister. It reminded him of how he used to carry Benjamin when his son was small. They woke Thomas and made their way to the house through the snow. Jack settled Lucy in Sarah's old rocking chair by the kitchen fire while Emma hovered nearby, wringing her hands. "What can I do?" Emma asked. "There must be something." "Boil water," Jack said, rummaging through the cabinet where he kept his medical supplies. "And find the cleanest cloth you can. Thomas, you help her." As the children busied themselves with tasks, Jack pulled out a small brown bottle. Willow bark extract. Sarah had always kept it on hand for fevers. There wasn't much left, but it might be enough. He mixed a small amount with warm water and knelt beside Lucy's chair. "Emma, hold her head up." Emma supported her sister while Jack carefully spooned the bitter medicine between Lucy's cracked lips. The little girl made a face but swallowed. "Will she be all right?" Thomas asked, his young voice small with fear. Jack met the boy's eyes, seeing his own terror reflected there. How many times had he asked the same question about Benjamin? How? Many times had the doctor given him false hope? I don't know, Jack said honestly. Fevers are dangerous things. All we can do is keep her comfortable and hope it breaks. For the next several hours, they took turns sitting with Lucy. Emma refused to leave her side, but Thomas helped Jack with morning chores, feeding the horses, milking the cow, collecting eggs from the few chickens that remained. The boy was a natural with animals, Jack noticed. He spoke to the horses in soft tones, and they responded to him with gentle nudges and soft whickers. It reminded Jack of himself at that age, when he dreamed of nothing but working with horses and cattle. You ever work a ranch before? Jack asked as they mucked out the stalls. Thomas shook his head. No, sir. We lived in the city mostly, after. Our folks died. But I always wanted to learn about animals and such. Your parents? What happened to them? The boy's shoulders sagged. Factory fire. Papa worked at the textile mill, and Mama cleaned offices at night. They were both there. When it happened, Emma and me, we got sent to the orphanage after that. And Lucy? She was already there when we arrived. Her folks died of cholera the year before. She was real little then, maybe 3 years old, scared of everything and everybody. But Emma, she took to Lucy right away, started looking after her, like she was her own baby sister. Jack paused in his work, watching Thomas's face as he spoke. The boy had an old soul, the kind that came from seeing too much too young. Mrs. Dunn, Jack said carefully. How'd you come to know her? Thomas smiled for the first time since they'd arrived. Oh, Mrs. Dunn was an angel. She came to the orphanage every week, bringing books and candy and sometimes clothes she'd sewn. Herself, she'd read to us, teach us letters and numbers. When the orphanage got too crowded and they were going to split us up, send Emma to one place and me and Lucy somewhere else, Mrs. Dunn took us in. She had a house? A little one, just outside Denver. Wasn't much, but it felt like a palace to us. She let Emma help with the cooking, taught me to chop wood and tend her garden. And Lucy ... double quotes Thomas's voice. Lucy was her special favorite. Used to call her my little sunbeam. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, the rhythm of the work familiar and soothing. When they returned to the house, they found Emma still holding vigil beside Lucy, who was restless with fever dreams. She's been talking about her mama, Emma said quietly, asking for someone named Rose. Jack's breath caught. Rose had been Catherine's middle name. Catherine Rose Dunn. How could this child know that? Emma, Jack said slowly. The letter Mrs. Dunn gave you. Do you know what it says? Emma shook her head. She sealed it before she gave it to me. Said it was for your eyes only, but that it would explain everything. Jack looked down at Lucy, whose small face was flushed with fever, her golden curls damp with sweat. She looked so much like Sarah at that age, but now he wondered ... Where's the letter now? In my bag. Emma gestured toward a small cloth sack in the corner. Jack retrieved the envelope, his hands surprisingly steady as he broke the wax seal. The paper inside was covered in Catherine's familiar handwriting, though it was shakier than he remembered, probably weakened by her final illness. My dearest Jack, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and Emma has brought the children to you, as I instructed. I pray you will not turn them away, though I know I have no right to ask anything of you after all these years. There is much I need to tell you, and little time left to write it. The consumption is taking hold faster than I hoped, and I fear I will not see another spring. First, about Lucy. Jack, she is your daughter. Jack's hands trembled, and he had to set the letter down for a moment. Emma looked up at him with concern. Mr. Macready, you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost. Jack picked up the letter again, his heart pounding. I know this comes as a shock. When my father forced me to leave Montana, I was already carrying your child. I didn't know it at the time. I was so young, so frightened. By the time I realized, I was already in Boston, already promised to Richard Dunn. I told Richard the child was premature when Lucy was born. He never questioned it, was actually quite devoted to her. But Jack, she has your eyes, your stubborn chin, your gentle way with hurt things. Richard died when Lucy was 2, and I thought about writing to you then. But I was proud and foolish, and convinced myself that Lucy was better off without knowing the truth. I moved us to Denver, thinking a fresh start would be best. When I got sick last year, Lucy went to the orphanage temporarily while I tried to recover. That's where she met Emma and Thomas. Those 2 children became her family when I was too ill to care for her properly. They protected her, loved her, made her feel safe when the world was falling apart around her. I know you loved Sarah and Benjamin with all your heart. Emma told me they had passed, and I grieved for you. Jack, I grieved for the man I once knew who deserved so much happiness. I also know that you have the biggest heart of any man I ever met. These 3 children, they need each other, and they need someone who will see them as a family, not as burdens or charity cases. Lucy doesn't know you're her father. I thought it best to let you decide whether to tell her. But Jack, if you could see her laugh, see how she makes Thomas brave and Emma gentle, you would love her for who she is, not just for the blood you share. I have asked so much of you already, by sending them to your door. I pray you will forgive an old woman's presumption, and give these children the home they deserve. With all my love and deepest regrets, Catherine. Spring came early to Montana that year, bringing with it both hope and unexpected challenges. As the snow melted and revealed the ranch land beneath, Jack found himself looking at his property through new eyes. Where once he'd seen only memories of loss, he now saw possibilities for the future. The legal proceedings had gone more smoothly than expected. Judge Harrison in the territorial capital had been impressed by the children's obvious devotion to each other and to Jack, and the adoption. Papers were filed with minimal fuss. Emma, Thomas, and Lucy were officially McCready's now, but their first real test as a family came in late April, when 3 riders appeared at the ranch gate just after dawn. Jack was teaching Thomas how to brand the new calves when Emma came running from the house, her face pale with worry. Jack, there's men at the gate. They look like ... like trouble. Jack straightened, his hand instinctively moving to the rifle he'd taken to carrying since the children arrived. Through the morning mist, he could make out 3 figures on horseback, and something about their posture set his teeth on edge. Thomas, take the girls to the house, Jack said quietly. Lock the doors, and don't come out unless I call for you. But Jack, now, son. Thomas nodded and ran toward the house, where Lucy was feeding chickens in the yard. Jack watched until all 3 children were safely inside before walking toward the gate. The men waiting there were trouble. All right. Jack could tell from 50 yards away. They had the hard, weathered look of men who lived by their guns, and their horses were travel-worn and rough-treated. The leader was a lean man with cold gray eyes and a scar running from his left ear to his jaw. He smiled when he saw Jack approaching, but it wasn't a friendly expression. You, McCready? The man asked. I am. What's your business here? Name's Cole Branson. These are my associates, Pike and Russell. He gestured to the 2 men flanking him. We're looking for some children. 3 of them, traveling with stolen property. Jack's blood went cold, but he kept his expression neutral. Don't know anything about stolen property, and the only children here are my own. Branson's smile widened. See, that's funny. Because we tracked those kids all the way from Denver. They took something that doesn't belong to them from the woman who is keeping them. Old lady named Dunn. Mrs. Dunn is dead, Jack said flatly. Oh, we know. And when she died, her property should have gone to her next of kin. That would be her nephew, Richard Dunn, Jr. He hired us to track down what was stolen and bring it back. Jack felt pieces clicking together in his mind. Catherine's letter had mentioned money, $500, in a bank account for Lucy. If Catherine had family who felt entitled to her inheritance, ... double quotes, what exactly are you claiming was stolen? Money, bank documents, legal papers. The kids took them when they ran off from the funeral. Branson leaned forward in his saddle. Now we can do this easy or hard, McCready. You turn over the children and whatever they took, and we'll be on our way. You make trouble, and things might get unpleasant. Jack's grip tightened on his rifle. And if I told you those children are legally adopted, that they're my responsibility? Now, I'd say that's a mighty convenient story. Pike spoke up for the first time. He was a heavy-set man with mean eyes. Especially since we heard in town that you're a crazy hermit who ain't been seen for years. What would a man like you want with 3 orphan brats? Before Jack could answer, Thomas appeared around the corner of the house, despite orders to stay. Inside, the boy was carrying Jack's old hunting rifle, holding it with the competence of someone who'd been taught to shoot. Get away from our pa, Thomas said, his young voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. You ain't welcome here. Branson laughed. Your pa? Boy, we know exactly where you came from, and it wasn't from this man's loins. Now put down that gun before you hurt yourself. Thomas. Jack's voice was calm but firm. Go back to the house. But Jack, go. Now. Thomas hesitated, then slowly backed toward the house, the rifle still trained on the 3 men. Smart boy, Branson said. Knows how to follow orders. Now, about those papers and money, ... double quotes. There's no stolen property here, Jack said. Catherine Dunn left instructions for the children's care, and a small inheritance for one of them. All legal and proper. We'll be the judge of that. Russell, Pike, searched the house. The 2 men started to dismount, but stopped when Jack leveled his rifle at them. Nobody searches my house without a warrant, Jack said quietly, and nobody threatens my children. Your children? Branson's voice was mocking. Come on, McCready. We both know these aren't your kids. Word is you lost your real family years ago. These are just strays you picked up out of misplaced guilt or loneliness. Something dangerous flickered in Jack's eyes. You're right about one thing, Branson. I did lose my family, and it nearly killed me. So I know exactly how precious family is and exactly how far I'll go to protect it. Even if it means dying for kids that ain't your blood. Jack's smile was colder than the morning air, especially then. The standoff might have continued indefinitely, but Lucy chose that moment to appear on the front porch, despite Emma's obvious attempts to hold her back. Jack, she called, her small voice carrying clearly in the morning air. Are these the bad men? The ones Rose warned me about? Branson's attention fixed on Lucy with laser intensity. Well, well, if it isn't little Lucy Dunn, you remember us. Don't you, sweetheart? We were at your Mama Rose's funeral. Lucy shrank back against the porch railing, and Jack saw real terror in her eyes. She did remember them. That's close enough, Jack said as Branson started to dismount. You've said your piece. Now get off my land. Can't do that, McCready. See that little girl there? She's got something that belongs to our employer, and we ain't leaving without it. The inheritance is legally hers. Maybe, maybe not, but that's for the courts to decide. Right now, we're taking her back to Denver to sort this all out. Over. My dead body. Branson's hand moved to his gun. That can be arranged. The situation was spiraling toward violence when Emma stepped onto the porch beside Lucy. In her hands, she held a packet of papers. Is this what you want? She called out. The bank papers? Mrs. Dunn's will? Emma, no, Jack said sharply. But Emma ignored him. I'll make you a deal, she said to Branson. You can have the papers, but you leave Lucy here. She belongs with us now. Branson considered this. All the papers? Including the bank account information? All of them? Emma! Lucy grabbed her sister's arm. That's my inheritance. Rose said it was for my future. Your future is here, Emma said firmly. With Jack. And Thomas and me. Money isn't worth anything if we're not together. Jack felt pride and heartbreak war in his chest. Emma was willing to sacrifice Lucy's inheritance to keep the family together, but he couldn't let her do it. Wait, he called. Out. There's another option. Branson raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. You want the money? Fine. I'll buy Lucy's inheritance from her. $500 cash right now. Emma gives you the papers showing the transfer, and you ride away with proof that your employer got what he was owed. You got $500 just lying around? Pike asked skeptically. Jack did, actually. He'd sold most of his cattle herd over the past year, and the money was sitting in his own bank account, untouched. He'd been planning to use it for his burial expenses. I'll ride to town and get it, Jack said. Bank opens in 2 hours. But one of you stays here as insurance, and the other two come with me. Nobody touches my children while I'm gone. Branson considered this, clearly weighing his options. Taking the money would accomplish his employer's goal without the risk of kidnapping, charges, or a shootout with an armed homesteader. Russell stays, he said finally. Pike and I go with you. But McCready, any tricks, any attempts to bring back help, and Russell has orders to take all 3 kids. Jack nodded grimly. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it would keep his family safe. 2 hours later, Jack returned with $500 in cash and a signed document transferring Lucy's inheritance to himself. Branson examined both carefully before nodding to his men. Pleasure doing business with you, McCready, he said as they mounted up. Though I got to say, you're a fool for spending good money on kids that ain't even yours. Jack looked back at the porch where Emma, Thomas, and Lucy stood watching. Emma had her arms around both younger children, and all 3 were looking at him with expressions of love and trust that took his breath away. You're wrong about that, Jack said quietly. They're mine in every way that matters. After the men rode away, Lucy ran to Jack and threw her arms around his waist. I'm sorry, she said, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry you had to spend your money because of me. Jack knelt down to her level, cupping her small face in his hands. Lucy, listen to me. That money? It was just sitting in a bank, not doing anybody any good. But you and Emma and Thomas, you've given me more than any amount of money could buy. You've given me a reason to get up in the morning, a reason to fix up this old ranch, a reason to believe in tomorrow. But now you're poor because of us, Thomas said, his young face troubled. Jack laughed, surprising them all. Poor? Son, I'm the richest man in Montana Territory. I've got a family who loves me, land to work, and hope for the future. What more could a man want? That evening, as they sat around the dinner table that Emma had set with wildflowers from the meadow, Jack looked at the 3 faces illuminated by lamplight and felt a peace he hadn't known in years. Emma was recounting her day with quiet pride. She'd successfully baked bread entirely on her own. Thomas was excitedly describing a new foal he'd helped deliver. And Lucy was chattering about the butterfly garden she wanted to plant behind the house. Jack, Lucy said suddenly, when I grow up, will I still be a McCready? Always, Jack said. Firmly, McCreadys stick together, no matter what. Even when we're old and married and have babies of our own, even then, this ranch will always be your home, all of yours. And someday, when I'm too old to work it anymore, it'll be yours too. Take care of. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "You really mean that? This is really our home forever?" "Forever and always," Jack confirmed. "We're a family now, the four of us. And nothing and nobody will ever change that." Outside, the Montana wind sang through the cottonwood trees, carrying with it the promise of summer and the hope of many years to come. Inside the McCready house, a family born not of blood, but of choice, settled into their evening routines. Secure in the knowledge that they belonged to each other completely, Jack McCready had started digging his own grave on a cold winter night, convinced his life was over. Instead, he'd found 3 children who helped him dig up his buried heart and plant it in new soil. Now, as spring gave way to summer, that heart was blooming again, not with the memory of what he'd lost, but with the reality of what he'd found. Family, he realized, wasn't just about blood or birth or law. It was about choice. It was about love. It was about standing together when the world tried to tear you apart. And as he tucked Lucy into bed that night and listened to Emma and Thomas planning tomorrow's chores, Jack McCready knew he was the luckiest man alive.